Welcome back for part 2 of The Impaler Vlad Tepes. Truly hope you're enjoying this man's life story. Now let's move on to the rest of Vlad's life. Please hit that like and subscribe button. Ladislaus V of Hungary had Ladislaus Hunyadi executed on March 16, 1457. Hunyadi's mother, Elizabeth Szolgi, and her brother, Michael Szolgi, stirred up a rebellion against the king. Taking advantage of the civil war in Hungary, Vlad assisted Stephen, son of Bogdan II of Moldavia, in his move to seize Moldavia in June 1457. Vlad also broke into Transylvania and plundered the villages around Brav and Sibiu. The earliest German stories about Vlad recounted that he had carried men, women, children from a Saxon village to Wallachia and had them impaled. Since the Transylvanian Saxons remained loyal to the king, Vlad's attack against them strengthened the position of the Szolgis. Vlad's representatives participated in the peace negotiations between Michael Szolgi and the Saxons. According to their treaty, the burghers of Brav agreed that they would expel Dan from their town. Vlad promised that the merchants of Sibiu could freely buy and sell goods in Wallachia in exchange for the same treatment of the Wallachian merchants in Transylvania. Vlad referred to Michael Szolgi as his lord and elder brother in a letter on December 1, 1457. Ladislaus Hunyadi's younger brother, Matthias Corvinus, was elected King of Hungary on January 24, 1458. He ordered the burghers of Sibiu to keep the peace with Vlad on 3 March. Vlad styled himself lord and ruler over all of Wallachia and the duchies of Amla and Fra on September 20, 1459, showing that he had taken possession of both of these traditional Transylvanian fiefs of the rulers of Wallachia. Michael Szolgi allowed the boyar Michael, an official of Vladislav II of Wallachia, and other Wallachian boyars to settle in Transylvania in late March 1458. Before long, Vlad had the boyar Michael killed. In May, Vlad asked the burghers of Brav to send craftsmen to Wallachia, but his relationship with the Saxons deteriorated before the end of the year. According to a scholarly theory, the conflict emerged after Vlad forbade the Saxons to enter Wallachia, forcing them to sell their goods to Wallachian merchants at compulsory border fairs. Vlad's protectionist tendencies or border fairs are not documented. Instead, in 1476, Vlad emphasized that he had always promoted free trade during his reign. The Saxons confiscated the steel that a Wallachian merchant had bought in Brav without repaying the price to him. In response, Vlad ransacked and tortured some Saxon merchants, according to a letter that Basarab Lyat, a son of Dan II of Wallachia, wrote on January 21, 1459. Basarab had settled in Sighiara and laid claim to Wallachia. However, Matthias Corvinus supported Dan III, who was again in Brav against Vlad. Dan III stated that Vlad had Saxon merchants and their children impaled or burnt alive in Wallachia. You know that King Matthias has sent me, and when I came to Arabrazi, the officials and counselors of Brav and the old men of Arabrazi cried to us with broken hearts about the things which Dracula, our enemy, did, how he did not remain faithful to our lord, the king, and had sided with the Ottomans. He captured all the merchants of Brav and Arabrazi who had gone in peace to Wallachia and took all their wealth, but he was not satisfied only with the wealth of these people, but he imprisoned them and impaled them, 41 in all. Nor were these people enough. He became even eviler and gathered 300 boys from Brav and Arabrazi that he found in Wallachia. Of these, he impaled some and burned. Dan III broke into Wallachia, but Vlad defeated and executed him before April 22, 1460. Vlad invaded southern Transylvania and destroyed the suburbs of Brav, ordering the impalement of all men and women who had been captured. During the ensuing negotiations, Vlad demanded the expulsion or punishment of all Wallachian refugees from Brav. Peace had been restored before July 26, 1460, when Vlad addressed the burghers of Brov as his brothers and friends. Vlad invaded the region around Amla and Fra on 24 August to punish the local inhabitants who had supported Dan III. Matthias Corvinus came to Transylvania in November 1462. The negotiations between Corvinus and Vlad lasted for weeks, but Corvinus did not want to wage war against the Ottoman Empire. At the king's order, his Czech mercenary commander, John Gisgrove Brands, captured Vlad near Ruker in Wallachia. From having to explain Vlad's imprisonment to Pope Pius II and the Venetians who had sent money to finance a campaign against the Ottoman Empire, Corvinus presented 3 letters, allegedly written by Vlad on November 7, 1462, to Mem II, Mahmud Pasha, and Stephen of Moldavia. According to the letters, Vlad offered to join his forces with the Sultan's army against Hungary if the Sultan restored him to his throne. Most historians agree that the documents were forged to give grounds for Vlad's imprisonment. Corvinus's court historian, Antonio Bonfini, admitted that the reason for Vlad's imprisonment was never clarified. Florescu writes, His style of writing, the rhetoric of meek submission hardly compatible with what we know of Dracula's character, clumsy wording, and poor Latin are all evidence that the letters could not be written on Vlad's order. He associates the author of the forgery with a Saxon priest of Brov. Vlad was first imprisoned in the city of Belgrade, now Alba Iulia in Romania, according to Chalcondyles. Before long, he was taken to Visegrad, where he was held for 14 years. No documents referring to Vlad between 1462 and 1475 have been preserved. In the summer of 1475, Stephen III of Moldavia sent his envoys to Matthias Corvinus, asking him to send Vlad to Wallachia against Basarab Liat, who had submitted himself to the Ottomans. According to his letter, Stephen wanted to secure Wallachia for a ruler who had been an enemy of the Ottoman Empire because the Wallachians were like the Turks to the Moldavians. According to the Slavic stories about Vlad, he was only released after he converted to Catholicism. Mem II invaded Moldavia and defeated Stephen III in the Battle of Valia Alb on July 26, 1476. Stephen B. Thori and Vlad entered Moldavia, forcing the Sultan to lift the siege of the fortress at Târgu Neam in late August, according to a letter from Matthias Corvinus. The contemporaneous Jacob unrest added that Vuk Grigorevi and a member of the noble Jackie family also participated in the struggle against the Ottomans in Moldavia. Matthias Corvinus ordered the Transylvanian Saxons to support Bithori's planned invasion of Wallachia on September 6, 1476, also informing them that Stephen of Moldavia would also invade Wallachia. Vlad stayed in Brov and confirmed the commercial privileges of the local burghers in Wallachia on October 7, 1476. Bithori's forces captured Târgovite on 8 November. Stephen of Moldavia and Vlad ceremoniously confirmed their alliance, and they occupied Bucharest, forcing Basarab Liat to seek refuge in the Ottoman Empire on 16 November. Vlad informed the merchants of Brov about his victory, urging them to come to Wallachia. He was crowned before 26 November. Basarab Liat returned to Wallachia with Ottoman support, and Vlad died fighting against them in late December 1476 or early January 1477. In a letter written on January 10, 1477, Stephen III of Moldavia related that Vlad's Moldavian retinue had also been massacred. According to the most reliable sources, Vlad's army of about 2,000 was cornered and destroyed by a Turkish Basara force of 4,000 near Snagov. The exact circumstances of his death are unclear. The Austrian chronicler Jacob Unrest stated that a disguised Turkish assassin murdered Vlad in his camp. In contrast, Russian statesman Fyodor Kurutsyn, who interviewed Vlad's family after his demise, reported that the voivode was mistaken for a Turk by one of his rumored own troops during battle, causing them to attack and kill him. Florescu and Raymond T. McNally commented on this account by noting that Vlad had often disguised himself as a Turkish soldier as part of military ruses. According to Leonardo Botta, the Milanese ambassador to Buda, the Ottomans cut Vlad's corpse into pieces. Bonfini wrote that Vlad's head was sent to Mem II. It was eventually placed on a high stake in Constantinople. His decapitated head allegedly was displayed and buried in Voivode Street, today Bankalar. Local peasant traditions maintain that what was left of Vlad's corpse was later discovered in the marshes of Snagov by monks from the nearby monastery. The place of his burial is unknown. According to popular tradition, which was first recorded in the late 19th century, Vlad was buried in the monastery of Snagov. However, the excavations carried out by Dinu V. Rossetti in 1933 found no tomb below the supposed unmarked tombstone of Vlad in the monastery church. Rossetti reported, "Under the tombstone attributed to Vlad, there was no tomb, only many bones and jaws of horses." Historian Konstantin Rezakevisi said Vlad was most probably buried in the first church of the Komana monastery, which had been established by Vlad and was near the battlefield where he was killed. Vlad's brutality, but they also underline that his cruelty enabled him to strengthen the central government in Wallachia. For instance, the Skazani writes of a golden cup that nobody dared to steal at a fountain because Vlad hated stealing so violently that anybody who caused any evil or robbery did not live long, thereby promoting public order. And the German story about Vlad's campaign against Ottoman territory underlined his cruel acts, while the Skazani emphasized his successful diplomacy, calling him Zamadri or evil wise. On the other hand, the Skazani sharply criticized Vlad for his conversion to Catholicism, attributing his death to this apostasy. Some elements of the anecdotes were later added to Russian stories about Ivan Terrible Russia. The mass murders that Vlad carried out indiscriminately and brutally would most likely amount to acts of genocide. Wallachia and Moldavia, with political observations relative to them, published in 1820. Stoker apparently did not know much about Vlad the Impaler, certainly not enough for us to say that Vlad was the inspiration for Count Dracula, according to Elizabeth Miller. For instance, Stoker wrote that Dracula had been of Shikili origin only because he knew about both Attila the Hun's destructive campaigns and the alleged Hunnic origin of the Shikilis. Stoker's main source, Wilkinson, who accepted the reliability of the German stories, described Vlad as a wicked man. Stoker's working papers for his book contains no references to the historical figure, the name of the character being named in all drafts but the later ones Count Wampir. Consequently, Stoker borrowed the name and scraps of miscellaneous information about the history of Wallachia when writing his book about Count Dracula. I am truly hoping you enjoyed the life of Vlad Tepes and how, yes, he was brutal to modern standards, but he was fighting for his country to survive. The more modern slides are from the inside of Dracula's castle. Love you all and hope your night goes well.